Hello, my name is Ioana, and today I'm going to be talking about Cynthia Cooper and WorkCom case study. I do believe Cynthia is in a very difficult situation and has an extremely important decision to make, as she found $4 billion in questionable account entries for WorkCom. And of course, if she would reveal this information, there are so many risks that come up with that, and the company would also disappear along with the employees, the pension funds, and many other benefits. So I'm going to move on and talk about the ethical point of view of Immanuel Kant, George Brancard, and Cicela Bock. I hope I pronounced their name correctly. So according to Immanuel Kant, he believes that everybody should speak the truth and a liar destroys fellowship. And then he also says that no person is candid, and if we all were candid, there was no need for the human to be reserved. So in this particular case, he believes that Cynthia Cooper should just say the truth and basically not hide anything. As I mentioned earlier, he talks about being reserved, but there is a difference between being reserved and being secretiveness. So it's different because a person can just have no desire to speak about the subject or not speak at all, or reserve is just easy for them. So for example, some secrets are just tough and just more difficult to be kept, like the one in this case study, WorkCom, because Immanuel Kant says that a secret has a way of coming out. So there was a interesting action in the case study where Scott Sullivan, which is the CFO of the company, and I believe he's the one that was in charge of this $4 billion accounting fraud, he went to Cynthia to explain, to ask her what she has been doing, and she actually told him the truth. And then he said, hold on with the audit because in the next quarter I'm going to solve the problems. Which now I'm wondering, what should she do? She should believe him and assume that, yes, he will be fixing all the problems, or should she continue with the audit and maybe find more information about the fraud? So according to Kant, since I don't believe Scott Sullivan, he made a false declaration. And if I'm correct, falsiloquium. I'm sorry, I might not be pronouncing the word correctly, second language. Anyway, so moving on to George Brancard's point of view about trust. And his point of view totally relates to our case study, because there is trust involved between Cynthia Cooper and her team, her auditor, Gene Morse, and then there's also trust involved between Sullivan and the auditors from Arthur Andersen. Yeah. So according to him, trust is not a moral principle, but it's an attitude and how we react in particular situations and accept the risk that the other person that we trust is not having the intentions to harm us. So for example, Gene Morse could just choose to go and reveal the information Cynthia was debating if she should reveal or not. And in that case, if Gene Morse relieves the information first, then Cynthia's job might be at risk because she made this unethical decision of not saying it first, and just giving trust to another person it's risky. And also Andersen auditors can choose to reveal all the information about Scott Sullivan's actions. So according to him, to George Brancard, trust is built on common values, and in this case Cynthia and her team had common values. They were working late hours given from their personal time for discovering this accounting fraud. And there are two types of trust that George talks about, and they are basic, guarded, and extended. And I believe they fall into the extended trust because that is represented by a relationship that involves trusting other individuals or companies with no special contracts are being present. And with this type of trust, there is certainly a big risk. As I said, if somebody divulges the information first, other person, Cynthia, if Jean Morris tells the information, then Cynthia is at risk. If Arthur Andersen auditors decide not to cover up Sullivan anymore, he is at risk. So I found trust really interesting, and also I like the example you, professor, gave us in class about the jail situation. If both people don't say anything, nobody goes to jail. But if one person says something, they go to jail for 5 years, and the other person goes for 20 years. So it's just you giving trust to somebody else, and yeah, that's risky. Moving on to Cicela's point of view, which personally I found really interesting, and I really had a pleasure reading it, because she talks about the moral conflicts and how Cynthia is conflicted in deciding to speak up for the public interest or just be loyal to her job, her colleagues, her company. So first, she needs to decide if speaking out will be for the better. And then she needs to decide if the public interest is bigger than the responsibility she has towards herself and her colleagues, basically. And if she does take the approach to speak out, of course, there are results and fears that for carrying out such a duty, as her career, other people's career, companies' welfare. And I believe this is a really complicated decision to make, as she's conflicted in what to choose. And as I mentioned before, I agree with Bock's ethical point of view, because I consider the public needs to be aware of this fraud. And maybe other companies would not make this mistake. For example, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Sarbanes-Oxley Act, that has been implemented in 2002. And before this act, as I read on some articles, this act has been implemented after there were so many accounting frauds that have been discovered in companies. And the act requires the adoption and the maintenance of the code of ethics by every organization, and also requires prompt internal reporting if anybody violates the code. So if nobody speaks out about the accounting frauds, then they are just going to keep happening. There are some ideas for her that she could be doing, but I think one of them is unethical. For example, she could quietly leave her job, find another job, and then say it, report her findings, but I believe that's not ethical towards her employees, her team. Another idea is to seek consultation before she speaks out, but just the circumstances are really complicated and it can be dangerous. So to conclude, because I don't want to run out of time, I agree with Immanuel Kant and with Cicela Bock's ethical point of view. And if I were to advise Cynthia, I would advise her to speak up, because what has been happening in the accounting department is just so harmful for the company's future and just the industry. And this decision will also help other companies to be more aware and in control more of their departments. I'm thinking maybe if the amount was not $4 billion and it was only just a couple $1,000s of dollars, then all the risks may not be as high and may not even be worth it. But I believe what Scott Sullivan, the CFO, what decisions he took are too unethical and too harmful for the company and for everything that comes with his decision. And I think the right decision and the ethical decision is for her to speak out. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy my presentation.